Alright, so this week we're going to do our video on care of roughneck monitors. The same kind of generalized care information can work for a lot of the more tropical monitor species. I just want to point out that care for monitors is still an ongoing learning process. We still don't often successfully breed a lot of species in captivity, which means that we may or may not have the husbandry totally perfectly dialed in for them yet. So there's a lot of controversy and a lot of clashing when it comes to monitor husbandry. So it's important to remember that while what I'm going to suggest for you is what works for me and what works for us here in the store, I've kept and raised up roughneck monitors, not just the black roughnecks, but the brown roughnecks as well. This one is going to be about our little Varanus ruticalis, or black roughneck monitor. This little guy here is a little farmed baby, which is most of what you're going to see available in the pet trade is going to be farmed or originally wild caught animals. Everything that we have is going to be a long-term captive, so well established in captivity, or it's going to be an actual farmed baby. So this is a little black roughneck monitor, Varanus ruticalis. These guys are from Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, that whole area around there. As you can see, he's really healthy. These little guys here, while they're this size, they'll eat a variety of different things. The biggest thing that I have found to be important for these is to feed them as varied a diet as possible, with a lot of emphasis being placed on whole prey items. So while they're little like this, they'll actually still be eating insects, as well as pinky mice, roaches. You can also do a whole bunch of stuff. I pulled out a lot of what we have here. These are superworms. While these are kind of big for them, a lot of times, he's not going to be right now. While these might seem big, once this guy got just a little bit bigger, he'll actually chew them up and bite them in half, and you don't have to worry about the worms biting them with their little faces right there. Because honestly, if a monitor like that can chew up and eat a pinky mouse, it can take down a superworm no problem. The same for the giant mealworms. The only reason I would say to offer both kinds is just for the sake of variety. You always want to gut load your feeders with a high quality gut load, such as the Nature's Own Total Bites or the Repouchy Bug Burger. An insect like this is pretty much just a stomach with a head and legs. So if it's this big and its stomach and intestines are that big, you want the body to be full of nutritious food, which will make it in turn better for your monitor. And in addition, we've also got here, these are some roaches. This bigger one here is just to show you what a larger hisser would look like. So this is what a larger hisser is going to look like. At that size, obviously you don't want to feed it to a little baby monitor that's this big, because obviously the roach is about as big as the monitor is. Instead, you would be offering that little guy a roach that's the size of those, just because these roaches here are going to be a little bit smaller and easy for them to eat, and they're going to be a nice nutritious little addition to their diet. And the same thing applies for these as for the worms. Because these do have stomachs, fairly large stomachs, you want to fill it up with lots of nutrition, which in turn makes the whole roach itself healthier and better for your monitor lizard. So you can also do frozen thawed pinkies and fuzzies. The neat-ish thing about monitors is that the smellier it is and the grosser the rodent is, the more they usually like it. So if you get some that are kind of gross looking, like this one here, it looks like its stomach kind of, like this one we didn't want to feed to our colubrids, basically because the stomach kind of broke and it's gross. Monitors love that. They don't care if the stomach and intestines all came out of the rodent. So if you have any nasty frozen thawed stuff that kind of didn't thaw quite right, for your other animals, that's perfect for monitors. They love that kind of stuff. I highly recommend using primarily frozen thawed for your monitors, just because frozen thawed, one, it's easy to keep and maintain, it's a lot cheaper for the amount that you're going to be using for your animals, and mostly just because it's kinder for your animal and for the animal being fed to it. Feeding a live rodent to a monitor, or even live chicks for the larger species, I honestly feel is cruel, just because the way that the animal ends up dying is just not pleasant for anybody involved. So always try to stick to frozen thawed. It does tend to make the monitors a lot more mellow, just because they aren't hunting things down and killing them. You can just use tongs, tweezers like this. This is what we use to feed ours here. Using tweezers and tongs teaches the animals that your hands are not involved. Monitors are very, very, very smart. So if you condition them to learn that tweezers are always where food comes from, they're never really going to try and go for your hands because they know that hands aren't where the food comes from. Tweezers are. So you can kind of condition them to understand that tweezers are where all the good stuff's going to come from. So, all that being said, this cage here, which I kind of dismantled here, this is a temporary style cage for here in the store. We pretty much have him set up in here like this just so that we can monitor him here at the store. This in and of itself is kind of proof that a screen top cage is not necessarily going to be the death of your monitor, but it does mean you do have to much more closely monitor temperatures and humidity within the cage. This is too small for you to use at home. We can maintain them in here because it's only for a short period of time. It's a lot like going to the kennel or to the dog shelter and you see a dog or cat that are in those kennels there. Think of it kind of the same way. This is temporary. If you're going to be setting them up at home, I recommend the bigger the cage, the better. For starting these guys off, I'd use at least a 4-foot tank. Basically, this is going to allow you to give them the kind of temperature ranges that they most prefer. For us, with this guy here, he actually gets to go up here and bask, but because this basking area here is mesh, it's not going to kind of overheat. We have him basking, I've temped him at about 100. Once you get him home, you're going to want them to have a basking temperature that's even higher. Ideally, a monitor should be able to bask at about 130 degrees or so. That way they can actually digest larger prey items. So you're going to want a nice large cage to put your monitor in because they do want those high temperatures. Now again, for us here in the store and for you at home, if you're using a screen top cage like this, you're going to want a nice thick layer of substrate that's going to help you maintain humidity. Here in the store we use primarily the orchid bark, and a lot of times for these guys especially we'll mix in eco earth, which is a type of coconut bedding. The combination of the two holds a lot of moisture and a lot of humidity. And you can also make a nice thick layer of it for the monitor to burrow into. Roughneck monitors, while they're babies, depending on how big the cage is, may or may not burrow a whole lot. I know when I was raising these up, I almost never saw them in their cage. I had mine set up in a big 6-foot solid melamine cage with about 6 to 10 inches of bedding for them to burrow into. And for the first 2 months, I think I saw them maybe 3 times. And those 3 times were all times when I went and dug them up, just because they are very, very secretive when they're small. Okay, so while I didn't see them a whole lot, when I did see them, they were growing really significantly. They went from smaller than that guy, so I had little hatchlings, to about 2.5 foot monitors in the space of about 3 to 4 months. So they grew like weeds and they grew fast. The way that I had them set up was, again, that 6-foot cage. At home, I used a power sun bulb, which is a mercury vapor type of bulb. It's a big hot light bulb, lots of heat, lots of UV. Personally, what I like to recommend for folks that are keeping and trying to raise up monitors, I always recommend UVB, just because I feel very strongly that an animal is as heliophilic as a lot of these monitors can be, or sun-loving as a lot of these monitors can be. They really do thrive with more UV added to their enclosures. A lot of keepers keep them without UVB, and if you're feeding whole prey items that include a lot of organ meats, yes, you can probably get away without using it. However, if you're a beginner, if you've never really kept monitors before, if you've never really kept a large lizard before, I would highly recommend, you know what, just be safe. Better to be safe than sorry. Use a mercury vapor bulb, use a UVB light on your cage. You're going to have a much, much easier time. Just because a lot of the more experienced guys, the bigger guys can do it, doesn't necessarily mean that everybody can. So, just, you know what, it's a lot easier for the beginner. Just use something with UVB. I consider myself experienced. You guys are all here watching this video because you think that I've got the experience to tell you. At home, I still use UVB just because I would rather not have to worry about whether or not my monitors can get suitable vitamins, suitable nutrition, messing with their vitamin supplementation, anything like that. I'll just give them the lights that they need that mimic natural conditions as closely as I can in captivity and not worry about it. So, all that being said, I raised up mine under these mercury vapor bulbs, the Power Suns, and again, they had that nice big growth. What you can use and what a lot of keepers will do is they'll also use halogen bulbs. So these are a couple different kinds. Halogen bulbs are very, very hot and very, very bright, which is why a lot of keepers use them. Basically, for these 50-watt bulbs, you can have 2 of them over a section of the cage and create basically a basking zone, especially for larger monitors. It's a lot safer for them to have 2 or even 3 bulbs in a row, creating a large zone that's warm, rather than just one big bulb. For a large monitor, one big bulb can sometimes create a hot spot or a burn. Using 2 or 3 lower wattage bulbs to create that hot 130-degree basking area. Using 2 or 3 bulbs to create a zone that's going to be hot is much more ideal, especially for those larger monitors, just because that way there isn't one little area that gets hot while the rest of the monitor stays cold. You can actually heat up the whole thing from head to tail. So, all that being said, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can put in the cage. And in addition, and again, for my monitors at home in that big 6-foot cage, I also used a lot of sphagnum moss. This stuff here expands a ton. This one block here was enough for me to thoroughly pack my big 6-foot cage. And again, that's what I raised up the black roughnecks in. I also had a pair of brown roughnecks as well. This stuff was awesome because it's basically this yellow sphagnum like this. It'll hold a lot of moisture and it doesn't mold, so it's going to last for a long time in your cage. You can also stir it up into your bedding and add just yet another kind of texture and moisture holding thing to the substrate that'll help you maintain that kind of high humidity. Where did our little buddy go here? So in addition to a whole bunch of whole cry items, including all those insects I showed you earlier, you can also do stuff like the Cantego monitor food to add to the diet as kind of a filler to help give them extra calories, especially if you have a larger animal or a species that gets quite large and likes a lot of food to eat. Using stuff like the Cantego monitor food can help make it easy to just add variety to the diet without having to go too crazy buying a lot of stuff at the store. In addition, a lot of times if you don't like using live prey items such as or live insects like the worms, you can use canned insects. They smell quite strongly and quite distinctly. So the monitors often will go for them with no problems at all. And then because these guys are actually known for eating crabs and other crustaceans in the wild, you can even offer them the canned shrimp. They usually take it without any problem at all. I know my Roughneck monitors at home loved canned shrimp. I even get them human grade shrimps to eat, so you can go and get them human quality shrimps. You definitely want to get stuff that's intended for human consumption just because it's going to be safe, not have any parasites, anything that you have to worry about. And you can incorporate that into the diet as well. The biggest thing again is going to be variety and feeding them a nice healthy whole prey item diet. It's not necessarily a bad thing to use and include a lot of rodents in the diet as long as you're not overfeeding them, they're not ending up too fat. My monitors at home, my adult doom rolls, I fed them maybe 2 or 3 times a week, a nice big heavy meal. They'd eat, digest, fast, they'd hunt for a day or so, and then I'd offer them more food. They'd fill up, they'd eat a whole bunch, and then they'd be happy little campers. What I'm going to do is actually, just for about 5 seconds here, I'm going to actually include a picture of what my doom rolls look at home. That's the kind of weight that I like to maintain for my monitors. If you're cycling your females to breed, you may or may not want them to be fatter than the male I'm going to show you. But basically for maintaining a pet monitor at home, this is the kind of body condition you want to look for. So there's a lot of different options for when it comes to setting up your cage, and again, when you're setting up a baby like this, you can actually still use a glass tank with a screen lid, again, as long as you're monitoring the humidity and making sure that things are suitable for them. And again, in a screen top cage, it can be a lot harder to monitor correct humidity and to make sure things are adequate. So always watch your monitor, always make sure that everything's going well for them, it's eating, pooping, shedding, doing everything the way it should. If it's ever doesn't have a very good appetite, if it starts getting really finicky or really picky, that's often a sign that it's too dry or that it's too cool. So definitely make sure that you tweak your husbandry, tweak your settings. A bowl like this in a 4-foot cage for a monitor this big would be just fine. You can actually fill this up only halfway if you're worried about it being a little bit too deep and the guy may be drowning. And then as he gets a little bit bigger, you can use one of these extra large corner bowls. Both of these are going to be available on our website at www.LLLReptile.com. In addition to that, there's a lot of different products that you can use to help with the humidity. What we use here is we use a Reptifogger like this one. Lizard. These little foggers here are on our website as well, and we actually have it set up to turn on for an hour at a time every couple hours. So here in the store they actually do have, in addition to a cage that is nice and humid in it, This fogger here also goes off for a significant amount of time during the day, keeping the humidity nice and high for them. There's also things like the monsoon misting system, the Haba Mist, or the Repti-Rain, and the Mist King, all of which we carry on our website, and all which can be put up on a timer. The Mist King actually comes with a timer, as does the Monsoon. They can all be put on timers and make it really easy for you to keep humidity high within your cage. We also have a ton of different bowls and lagoons like this. In addition, we have all these lagoons. We have brown ones, we have blue ones. If you've got a nice thick layer of substrate, these actually have a lip that make them sit flush with the substrate. So it's going to look a little bit neater, a little bit more natural in the case of these in your cage. We also have these kind of fake rocks, which again, for a smaller monitor baby like this, you can actually use these as the uppermost basking spot in your cage. And what will happen is that because these aren't real rocks, they're not going to get so hot to the touch that your baby might actually burn itself on them, but they are going to retain heat and be a lot hotter than just using plain wood. So these can be a helpful way to increase your basking spot surface temperature. There's also, of course, the ubiquitous Haba Hut. These are okay for use in a monitor's cage. What you're going to want to do if you do use these is also have more secure hiding spots throughout the cage. What I like to do for these is I'll actually turn these sideways in the cage to create kind of a tree trunk looking area. And you can actually pack the inside with moss, but they'll actually just scale right up the top with the half logs. And it's a lot like how they would be climbing things in the wild. So again, it helps create a little bit more natural, naturalistic kind of enclosure. There's tons and tons of different options for decor in the cage. And then if we go down here, now here in our store in Menifee, we have all of this wood products here for people to select from. When you go online, you can actually choose the different sizes. So in a nice large cage, you can go with something like this, which is going to be the jumbo size cork ground. And so a little guy like this would be very, very, very happy climbing around and in and on a piece of wood this size. And if you've got a little lizard like this in a 4-foot cage, you're going to want a few nice big pieces of wood in there for them to climb on and to feel safe in. So you can use the smaller pieces, but again, keep in mind he's only going to be this little for a short period of time. So he's not really going to be able to utilize a littler piece of wood like that for very long. And then, of course, there's always the cork flats, which you can use to create backgrounds within your cage. You can stack them under the heat light, creating different zones of heat. And there's also, of course, the bigger pieces of cork, the bigger pieces of grape wood, sandblasted and naturalistic. All of these you can put within the cage, and again, while they're little like this, these guys can even use nice little slender branches like these. But as it gets bigger and older, you're gonna need the larger, thicker branches like that. Alright, so down here you can see we've actually got a ton of different plants, including these little tropical plants, ficus trees like this. There's succulents further down. When it comes to live plants in a monitor's cage, you have to keep in mind that while a baby like this isn't really going to do a lot of damage, a larger monitor, even just one that's twice this big, is actually going to be heavy enough to kind of crush the plants. Even the ficuses like this. So while you can put them in there, don't get too attached to your plants. Encourage them to grow. Put them in there because they do help with humidity to a certain extent. However, the downside is that the plants can be trampled, they can die. So just, you don't want to do anything too crazy with plants. Up here you can see the fogger going that I was talking about earlier. And here you can see is our little black roughneck trying to get out, and that's just one reason to have them in a nice big cage. Because while temporarily they're alright in these littler cages, once you get them home and you really want them to thrive for you and live at your house for a long period of time, you definitely want to make sure that they've got lots of space to roam around in. But the fogger that's going here, with enough eventually, within about 5 to 10 minutes, the fog will actually fill up the cage and result in a nice fogged up appearance on the glass. And that's how you know that the humidity within these cages is reaching an ideal setting. So that's just something, that is just one trick to try, one trick to use. You can see we've got our heat lights there above the cages as well. And then what you can't really see is that there's also heat pads that run along the backs of these cages. So these guys have plenty of heat and plenty of humidity here on this top row, which is just one reason why we have these guys here up in the top cages. So there you have it. That's just a little bit of basic information about caring for Varanus rudicalis, or the black roughneck monitor. Again, just to emphasize, monitor husbandry is one of the most demanding topics in reptile care. So while a lot of the recommendations I give worked for me raising up the Roughneck Monitors, works for us here in the store. As you can see, this is clearly a healthy, happy little baby. Make sure that you do your research, you learn about their natural husbandry, make sure that you learn about their care, where they're from, everything that they're going to need, and make sure that you're fully prepared for how big they get, because these guys can get up to 4 or 5 feet long. They can be very demanding. A large adult monitor like that does typically require a custom enclosure, so just make sure that you're prepared to deal with the size that they're going to get. If you have any questions about these, or if you want to order them, including any of the items you see on our website, make sure you visit our website at www.LLLReptile.com, where we have these and all of our available animals listed. And again, there you can see we've got our fogger set up there, running across all the cages. And that's it. That's our video for this week. Make sure you stay tuned and visit us again next week to see our next care video. Thank you for watching.